This is the Extra Point Podcast from Arizona's family.
Man, it is getting really hard to get excited about football season here in the desert. You have Arizona State with the bowl ban, all kinds of questions over there. And then today, word starts to break of Steve Wilks, the former Cardinal coach, testifying under oath that he was forced to use a burner phone while head coach of the Cardinals and berated by Michael Bidwell, the Cardinals owner. So let's talk to a man who's all over this story, has some strong opinions, a friend of the show, the one, the only Doug Franz zooms in here. And Doug, as this hit today, you have been all over this story talking to Terry McDonough. Is this kind of a knockout blow here for the Cardinals? What do you think happens after the Wilks testimony and how it's gone public today?
A lot to talk about in there. I found out last week that Steve Wilks was going to be testifying. And then I honestly, and this is one of those lessons as a reporter, I didn't take that scoop and run with it because I was told it could damage other people and their situation if I did. So I kept it quiet, and boom, ESPN doesn't really care about the other people that are involved. So I'm a little jealous of having more. I wish I didn't have the morals that I do, but maybe it would have been better for us. But that's what happened. And I can testify that ESPN's reporting was true for everything except one thing. They got one thing wrong. It's kind of asinine to really think Steve Keim was heavily involved. It says kind of before the suspension, after the suspension, this is Steve Keim's involvement. And from what I have been told, it was Steve Keim was just as much told what to do as was everybody else. Because if you think about it, you've just been suspended and given just the massive hammer that the Cardinals gave to him. So are you really then going to turn around before the suspension and say, okay, now here's what I'm going to do to get around the suspension? In my reporting, all of the sources that talk to me say that came from Michael Bidwell, but the report was true that Michael Disner was the person that was the go-between, that he presented the burner phones, who is now the COO of the Detroit Lions.
Well, and you see Kyle Odegaard, who was a reporter for the franchise on the team's website. He has tweeted pictures of the alleged burner phones, and we're going by what he put out there. They actually look like they have the initials, the initial of the last name of each of the gentlemen involved. Were you able to verify that at all?
100%. That was great reporting by Kyle Odegaard. And that's the difference between a good reporter and a talk show host, to be quite blunt, because I got that same picture from a source. And I want to be very clear because you had thrown out a name that I want to be important. Terry McDonough talked to me a lot quite a while ago. Then the actual person hearing the arbitration case dropped the hammer on all parties. And since that moment, Terry McDonough has no longer been a source. I still have other sources into it, but Terry has basically cut everybody out. So I do want to say that, but I can tell you, yes, I got that picture from somebody else a long time ago, and I took it like a joke. Like, there's no way this is real. Why would somebody take pictures of this? And I just, okay, and it's still in my phone. And I thought, and now as soon as Kyle tweeted that out, I was like, oh yeah, that's my picture too. I got that. So yes, that's 100% true. And that's exactly how they did it, by using those initials to try to keep the paper trail down. And Mark, that's where this becomes enormous, because let's go back to Deflategate, which, if you remember, was actually State Farm Stadium. Tom Brady's first game that he missed in Deflategate was at State Farm Stadium. Well, it was the Cardinals that issued Steve Keim the suspension, and the NFL decided not to give him more or a stiffer penalty because they thought that penalty was strong enough. They applauded Michael Bidwell for his strength in having this opinion. Well, with these allegations that are being reported, and I will confirm that Michael Bidwell was actually the one that was heavily involved in the burner phone saga. Well, now you have to ask, how hard was that suspension really? if he was also the one plotting to get underneath it. The NFL has no onions at all, Mark, and they're highly hypocritical if they give Michael Bidwell a less suspension than what they gave to Tom Brady, because Tom Brady hurt the integrity of the game by being a part of Deflategate. And it's the commissioner that has told us in the past that owners and executives will be held to a higher standard than players. So it's now up to the NFL to actually have meat behind what they're saying.
There was a line in the ESPN report when I read it initially. It is no longer in the article that said Bidwell has testified that he knew nothing about the burner phones. Do you know anything about that? Do you know if he's testified about this or when he will testify?
That would be a hole in my knowledge, but here's what this is total speculation on my part. I totally feel like my sources would have told me if he testified. So I will guess that he has not testified. However, you know just as much as I do the statement that the Cardinals have already given. And that is saying that Michael Bidwell, as soon as he found out about the burner phones, put an immediate stop to it. And that's really in complete conflict with what Steve Wilks testified, that the phones were collected by Michael Disner, the current COO of the Detroit Lions, at the moment that Steve Keim came back into the building.
So how long do you think this trial lasts? Do you have a feel for when there might be some sort of punishment handed down or some sort of decision in the case?
This is really an important point by you, and I think it has everything to do with, are we in mediation or are we in arbitration? The difference in those two terms are, mediation is let's all come together, hold hands, and figure out a way out of this. And what that means is Michael Bidwell paying an awful lot of people to be quiet. That's what that means. And if it stays in mediation, I think the NFL will probably be just as gutless as they were with Daniel Snyder, and you'll see a small little slap on the wrist and Michael Bidwell, and no one will know really what happened. However, if it stays in arbitration, if Terry McDonough continues to drive forward and say, you ruined my career and I'm not going to let you off the hook, and it keeps getting out, now the NFL is going to look at Michael Bidwell and say, you better solve this. And you better get a control of this, because now there's 31 other owners that are going to be upset about it. We are at an unbelievably precarious time in the history and future of the ownership of Michael Bidwell. Do I think he will lose the team eventually like Daniel Snyder did? Absolutely not. I don't think this rises to the point where advertisers will immediately pull, because remember, the NBA was not strong at all to Robert Sarver. It's the most gutless thing Adam Silver's ever done as the commissioner, was his wussy 1-year suspension of Robert Sarver. It was the strength of people like PayPal and Fries that stood up to that and changed the course of time. And that's how we brought in Matt Ishbia. I don't know if this rises to the point unless you can tie in the extra charge of racism with Michael Bidwell, because there's lots of points of this story where Michael Bidwell showed a complete level of irritability towards different black employees and black players. Now, if he showed that same level of irritability to everybody that's white as well, then that's not racist. And then I don't think it rises to the point where anybody pulls sponsorships. And to my knowledge, in my opinion, both at the same time, I don't think there's any threat where Michael Bidwell loses the team. But I think the hammer will drop, because I don't see Terry McDonough just accepting a check to go away.
Well, yeah, in your conversations with Terry McDonough, how far does this go? How frustrated is he? And I guess the question, as you look at this, because these are all allegations, none of this has been proven in a court of law. It's just testimony that we found out about today from a report. The frame of mind that Terry McDonough is in when you talk to him, how did you kind of take him to be?
I would say, and keep in mind, everybody can change. And so I have to go back through my notes when I specifically last talked to Terry McDonough, but it's been a while. And I can at least tell you, with me, he has not violated the dropping of the hammer by the arbitrator of there will be no leaks. You won't talk to anybody. But the last time I talked to him, and I'll ballpark it between 7 and 9 months. Yeah, about that. I'm sorry I'm being so vague on that, but I don't remember how long it's been. But the anger and frustration of him was bubbling, and I know why. This is just a simple dispute between two men until the Arizona Cardinals issued that absolutely ridiculous statement claiming that they have information that Terry McDonough is an abuser. And because he committed acts of domestic violence, and they were very concerned about this, and I don't have the statement in front of me, I just remember being appalled that you you would go after somebody personally like that. And that's when I decided to get involved. That's when I reached out to Terry McDonough as soon as that statement happened, because I thought that statement was so bogus, so unprofessional, and just plain sad to do something like that to a fellow or to a former employee. And once I saw that, that's when I said, hey, I got to get involved in this thing. So at that time, way back at the time that they issued that statement, I would say that Terry was absolutely irate, and I can understand why, because your entire person was attacked to the point where you're unhireable if any of those allegations are true. And in the conversations I've had with other sources to make sure that Terry McDonough is not full of crap, I have not been able to uncover anybody that would verify or back even an inkling of what the Cardinals alleged.
Man, it's these are, the beginning of the football season, you always try to get excited about the local teams, and you're looking at the Cardinals and thinking, well, it's going to be a long year. They're obviously, it looks like they're tanking, and they don't even have a starting quarterback. And then Arizona State, you're hoping people show up for the kids on Thursday night, but man, I mean, the bowl ban and just pulling out the rug from Kenny Dillingham before his team even takes the field. Has there ever been a football season where the local teams have taken the field where I mean, I'm having a tough time to get going here. Thank goodness the Diamondbacks, are still in this thing.
You're right, but at the same time, hey, Lourdes Gurriel, Tuesday night, if the two guys in front of you walk, don't swing at the first pitch, okay? Don't swing at the first pitch. What are you doing? The other two guys just got to walk. I'll save face by saying this. I love Chris Ball. I love the head coach at NAU, and I love Kenny Dillingham, and I have never had a beer with Jedd Fisch, but I kind of like him too. So it's hard to get excited because of the people above them, but those three men, I'm proud to say I'm from the state of Arizona, even though I don't know how any of them are going to have a good season.
Yeah, well, I mean, and back to ASU, I mean, you look at some of your concerns that you've brought up on your own podcast, which shameless plug. Actually, not shameless. You can always plug your podcast here. That's encouraged.
Doug Franz, unplugged, Apple, Spotify, Google, Amazon, or watch me live at WTSMTV.com in the morning.
But you've been banging the drum on this deal for a long time about why ASU did things a certain way. What did you think of their statement the other day that they issued to try to clarify things, why they rolled out the self-imposed bowl ban a week before the season?
It's funny. It was an attempt to clarify, and to me, it made it worse. That's how I felt about it, because number one, you had no problem paying Herm Edwards $4.4 million to go away. Yet it breaks out to $92,000 a player that you could have spent to send them to a bowl game. And I don't mean you're giving those kids that money. Tennessee believe their kids are so important, we should pay the $8 million fine in order to but in order to admit guilt, move on, and let our kids go to a bowl. ASU, on the other hand, said, no, our kids aren't worth that. We're not going to spend that. I wouldn't be bringing this up. $8 million is a lot of money. I wouldn't be bringing this up if it wasn't for the 4.4 you had to give to Herm Edwards. That's the one thing, Mark, out of all of this that I just don't understand is why in the world you would say we have done something so egregious, we need to give a bowl ban, but you didn't fire the head coach with cause, because if you fire him with cause, you owe him nothing. And instead they said, we want to pay you the money. So Ray's friend, here's a big check to go away. And now, wow, look at all these allegations. We need to take a bowl ban. And I look directly at Dr. Crow and say, answer me this. So far, you have admitted so much guilt by your actions to issue a bowl ban that if your actions are that huge in the athletic department, then why it's all that happened is a couple of assistants been fired. That's it. Because they fired Herm Edwards because he lost to Eastern Michigan. Make no mistake. It wasn't like they fired him and said, well, all of these allegations, things are going. No, they fired him because he lost to Eastern Michigan. So therefore, the only people that have been let go are some assistant coaches. You mean to tell me your athletic director wasn't involved? If he wasn't involved, Mark, then how did he not find out? How is he so ignorant of what's going on underneath him to not find out? And if he did know what was going on, then why was he so arrogant to think he could get away with it? At some point, Dr. Crow must wake up and say, you either coached it or condoned it. And either way, I can't have you as the athletic director.
Right. And I mean, you and I were both over there when Crow and Anderson answered questions. It was in the middle of football practice. They gave everybody about 20 minutes heads up, ran over there. It was up against the dome, the trash bag there. There was a speaker next to us. There was planes flying overhead. It was 115 degrees outside or whatever it was. That wasn't really a, hey, we're here to answer questions. That was more, let's just get this over with and get it done with. And I mean, veteran reporters couldn't even get over there. I've talked to some that are still pretty frustrated about that.
I can understand. And that actually, if we look at it from their point of view, shows their brilliance, because they didn't want a lot of difficult questions in that moment. And they know, if us in the media know what's going to happen, we have an opportunity to do extra research, ask more informed questions, we're going to be able to do something. I'm always careful when I talk about Dr. Crow, because, Mark, if there's anybody that doesn't know how to run a university, it is me. So when we talk about him as the academic president of ASU, and I see the changes that have gone on there since I moved in 2007. I don't like to talk about Dr. Crow from an academic standpoint, but his lack of knowledge of how athletics works on a national scale is so below par that I don't think he should continue as the president, because he's so heavily involved in the bad decision making. Larry Scott would have been fired a lot sooner if it wasn't for Dr. Crow. And I look at that and say all of the actions of Dr. Crow and Ray Anderson combined have more to do with the destruction of the Pac-12 than anybody. So if I'm the Board of Regents, I have one question. Why do we have a league game in Orlando? How did Orlando and Morgantown end up in our conference? And no, I'm not ripping Morgantown. I'm just, because I don't want to be Ray Anderson here. Listen, Morgantown, if you want to fly me into town for a game, I'll come. But I look at it and say, how are we in the same conference? What kind of expenses are we spending instead of going to LA? We are not in a conference with Los Angeles. Just let the geography, people that are educating our kids are explaining geography by saying Orlando is closer and more convenient than LA is. I don't understand that. If my wife's asleep, I can get to LA in 4.5 hours. It's about a 6-hour drive if she's awake. I have no idea why the car goes so much faster when she's asleep. I don't know. But that's what we're missing, and yet we're going over to Orlando and Morgantown. That's because of the leadership of Dr. Crow and Ray Anderson. No, they didn't want this to happen, but the terrible decisions they made ended up forcing the Pac-12 to disband.
Oh, man, it's depressing. But you're here to, bring some, in a land of confusion, in a land of chaos, a voice of reason. But could you put on a sport coat next time, Doug, for the podcast?
The answer to that is no, but I am impressed that you tried to drop a rare Phil Collins reference in 2023. So nice job on that.
All right. That'll be your walk-up song next time, The Land of Confusion, if we can get the rights. Hey, thank you so much for the time on short notice, bringing the heat. And when can we see you and hear you next?
Oh, you're wonderful to ask. I do a podcast every weekday morning from 6 to 8. You can see it live on WTSMTV.com. And then if you aren't able to be a part of it at that moment, then it also drops on a podcast on your phone every weekday morning. It goes up at about 9 o'clock, 9:30, called Doug Franz Unplugged. If you Google me, it's Franz, and it'll pop up, and I'm on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon. And if you hate one of those four, just for you, I'll find somebody else to put it on so anybody can listen to you. I'd love to have you on. And on occasion, Mark McClune joins us from his backyard. So
yeah, I'm going to get
more Mark McClune by watching.
I'm going to get better Wi-Fi next time. I don't even know what happened last time. All of a sudden, I just wasn't on. So I apologize, but my kids, I'll blame them for playing video games. Yes. Yeah.
I can
we'll use the computer next time. That's what we'll do. So, hey.
All good. I love having you, my friend.
Well, have a great night, and appreciate the time, and keep fighting out there for true justice in the American way.
That's exactly how I feel, and I'll wear my American flag shirt next time.
Okay, thanks. And a sport coat. The Extra Point Podcast is a production of 3TV, CBS 5, and azfamily.com in Phoenix, Arizona.